and we have a board meeting here on the 17th of July. And then if everything looks good, then 19th of July we're off to see how far we can get in Mexico.
Exciting.
Big market, lots of big fintech scene, lots of startups, lots of finance going on, lots of investment, lots of American money coming in.
Okay.
So it's the place to be for us.
Alexander, it's a big pleasure for me to be visiting you here again in the office, to have another sit-down interview with you. I guess we will skip the intro this time on the video, on the record on the interview, because we already did one 1.5 years ago in your former office.
Yep.
And I guess people who watch this already know you, and those who don't can probably just find the link to it in the description. So we'll try to get directly into the topic. We also had some informal talks before the interview, so yep. I guess we will go into it very fast. So basically interesting for me and also for the investors of Ibancar loans would be, how did Ibancar in the last year, since our last recorded interview? Maybe you can give us just an update what happened in the time between.
Well, I'd say the last 12 months has been just as interesting as any other 12 months, I suppose. There's always something going right and other things going wrong. But in the last year, I think we've been a lot more fortunate than other people in our business, in our sector. We obviously went through this big COVID crisis on the one hand, which was a big concern, big potential problem. Well, it was a problem, but some survived. We obviously did a bit better than others. And on the plus side, the growth. Obviously, we've managed to survive, keep growing. And when you look back now, it's almost as if nothing happened for us, which is very fortunate. So it was a blip, a long blip, but a blip. And a blip that could have been fatal or was fatal for many businesses, but thankfully because of the collateral that we have.
Yeah, I think this makes such a difference.
The psychology of our borrowers is different, and people continued to prioritize paying Ibancar.
Yeah, so for those who just can't relate at the moment, because we are very much into it, both of us meanwhile, I guess, you of course much more, but I'm as an investor, as a private investor, what we are talking about, that you have the pledge with the car. So yes. The car is a pledge on all the loans you offer, as far as I know.
Yeah. So
this is what we are talking about, the difference to others.
Yeah, maybe good to rewind a bit for the people who don't know our business. We, our idea is to be an inclusive lender, so online lender. When you look at online lending today, it's more and more automated, more and more algorithm driven, more and more data driven. So people who apply for a loan online, they have to fill in 20 questions or 30 questions, and then there's some kind of machine learning or algorithm which will decide who gets the loan and who doesn't. And everyone thinks that they do that better than everyone else, so you have a situation where people are cherry picking. The lenders are choosing which borrowers to give money to, and a whole lot of people get left out because they live in the wrong postcode, or they have the wrong job, or the wrong kind of employment contract. So we wanted to do things differently. We want to pick up everyone potentially who's being left out. And the only way you can do that is by using collateral. So if you need money and you have a car and you have some form of income which will allow you to repay the loan, then we will lend to you. And the product goes so far as to say, if you were unable to pay, you can give us your car to repay the loan. Very few people actually do that, and we don't repossess. I think we've repossessed 56 or 58 cars over 1,500 loans, so a very low percentage. Because people need this collateral. They drive to work, they drive their kids to school, so they prioritize the payments to Ibancar, very much like a mortgage, I think.
Okay, yeah, I guess it's very interesting exchange as well, because I wanted to stick on these questions I prepared this time, but for me it's always very exciting to have this exchange, also spontaneous. And what's also interesting for me regarding that is the history of Ibancar, which we know each other quite a while meanwhile, yeah, and so it's a good experience so far for me as a private investor, to be honest. Yeah, but on the other hand, I think, and I also talked to some people in Spain about Ibancar, and it's also quite a good reputation on the borrower side you have. So there are also, I guess, people coming again, coming back, taking a loan another time. So it's obviously also some kind of a fair product you offer.
Well, I think when you run a loan book and you want to be inclusive and you build a collateral-based and asset-based product, you have to understand that you're serving a subprime, primarily a subprime borrower, people who may not have access to conventional loans, people who have lower incomes, people who have variable incomes. So if you're going to offer loans to those people, you have to understand that you have to approach it in a different way. So you have to build flexibility into the product, which means, if we let people change the payment date, if their salary or their income dates change, we let people take payment holidays. If they've paid at least 6 months on time, you can take 3 payment holidays per year where you pay only half of the interest and the capital rolls forward. So we have, and when you have difficulties in paying, anyone who picks up the phone to talk to us, we end up successfully restructuring the loan. So that flexibility is built in because we know our target, we know who our market is. But obviously you still have people, like in any loan book, who want to take your money and disappear.
But then you have the car.
But then, we have developed a technique to recover the money.
Which is important
another way.
For us as an investor. Yeah?
Another way. But fortunately that doesn't happen too much.
So very interesting. And I think also interesting, we have been talking about that some weeks ago because we are in continuous exchange, and I appreciate it very, very much. Yeah? It's very important for me as a private investor. And you told me you can offer loans in about 4 hours online.
Yeah, I mean,
something like that, or
we've actually done better now because we've started automating more and more. We're building in more and more tech, and we've started using things like WhatsApp and DocuSign. We're now issuing loans, I think, in 2 hours. We can issue them in 2 hours.
Because this is also something that makes it, I guess, interesting for the people.
Well, that opens up the market because if you want. Most people don't look for a loan, a collateralized loan. They don't look for a loan with their car because they don't know that it exists. Most people online are looking for a fast loan.
Yeah.
And when you look for a fast loan, you don't usually get thousands of euros. Fast loans, payday loans, you'll get 300 euros, 500 euros, 600 euros. So when you look for a fast loan and you can see that you can get several thousand euros very quickly, then the car becomes irrelevant. I mean, if you intend to pay it back, it doesn't matter. So that's when we escape the niche and we enter the bigger market.
When you come into the game.
And automation plays a role. So now if we issue a loan in 2 hours or 2 days, it's not really down to us, it's down to the borrower. If he sends us the documentation that we need,
the papers from the car and everything,
then
you get in these 2 hours.
2 hours, it can be done. And then it depends on the bank cutoff time. So the bank transfers cut off around 1 p.m.
Sorry, I'm really personally interested in it, but you also ask for the original papers of the car to keep them? No, just a copy of that. And this is enough for you to use it as a pledge?
No, we need to see scanned copies of the car paperwork. I mean, in Spain, things like DocuSign, digital signatures, all electronic documents are now legally valid. So that allows us to digitalize the process. But obviously, we have to verify the authenticity of the documentation. If it's not scanned properly, or it's a bad picture, or the signature doesn't really look like the signature on the ID card, then obviously it doesn't get through our system. But Spain is pretty much digitalized, so it allows us to do things online.
So in case it is a default, it is enough for you to sell the car if you have the copy of the papers?
We don't sell the car.
Or how do you proceed
and
then?
Nor do we intend to try and repossess the car. Basically, we have contractually we have the ability to take ownership of the vehicle if the borrower has defaulted and if he has failed to respond to certain opportunities to restructure the loan.
But how do you get the money then at the end? Because then you have the car, okay. And then?
If we get the car, then we have a logistics team who are trying to negotiate the recovery of the vehicle. We don't send a bailiff to go and pick it up. So we still attempt a voluntary or an amicable resolution first of the loan, then of the repossession of the car. If we end up with a car, as I said, it's been 54 or 50, less than 60 cases in 1,500 loans. Then unfortunately we auction the car.
You auction. Yeah, this is what I wanted to hear. Just the final process in case.
Yeah, but we don't.
Worst case scenario. Yeah.
This is. I mean, people see these American shows where three big guys turn up on your doorstep and they take your car away with a truck. So no, that's not the way it works here. You'll get if you stop paying and you want to restructure, we'll restructure them. We don't want cars. We want loans. We're not car people.
Me as an investor either.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want a car. I'm going to send you a door or a window. That won't help you either. No. So if you have payment difficulties and you're communicating with us, we'll resolve those.
Okay.
If you have payment difficulties and you're not communicating with us, then eventually, and it can take a long time, it can take 100, 200, 300 days, the car will be caught in the system. Because it no longer belongs to you, you can't insure it, you can't do the technical checks.
But you still don't need the original paper for that. This is where my question goes to.
If you're in Mexico, you need the original paper because there's only one.
No, we are talking in Spain. Now it's Spain.
Spain is
Mexico
pretty digital.
Is maybe future business.
Maybe in Germany it's the same. In the UK it's the same. When you have a digital document.
This is what I didn't know that.
Yeah, Spain is pretty good on that.
Because this was for me to understand the business in the background, where you go digital completely and you don't need to wait, for example, until you get this original paper to pay the loan.
When we started in the beginning, we asked for a copy of the keys and the original documents, and we sent copies back to the clients. But as the bureaucracy has evolved and things like DocuSign have come up and the ministries of transport starts to accept digital documentation, it's become much easier. It's not because we've advanced so much, it's also because the bureaucracy has advanced. And if it goes even faster, then that will help us as well.
Very interesting process also for me to understand as a private investor. And now we come back to this question because it means exactly the next question, because I think this was where you could really benefit in this COVID time with this digital product on the client's perspective and the client side. But there also happened a lot in the COVID-19 time, of course, in the P2P industry for us investors. Just saying Grupeer developments, VIVENTOR take over. Don't want to mention too much names, but you don't list anymore on VIVENTOR and might have your reasons. But what have been your experiences and learnings in 2020 regarding P2P as an industry, but also, of course, in your business in general? Grupeer and so on.
Well, I mean, first of all, our business in general is risky, is difficult, and with the pressure from investors and fintech and the whole ecosystem to grow, people want to see growth in many cases ahead of profitability. I think that's not great in the lending ecosystem. And I think we've been wise to step away from that because it's easy to throw money around and it's very hard to get it back. So I think lending has struggled, and we've seen lots of originators fail, lots of business models fail, and lots of originators fail, simply because it was growth at all costs. And everyone thinks that their impairments will be offset by the interest rates, and then if you charge this much, it will cover that. And these models have failed over and over again. So I think we're in the safe space. Although we deal with a subprime borrower, we're in a safe spot because of the collateral, and the track record shows that. On the P2P side, I think it's almost as difficult. Because a lot of these platforms are not profitable. which means that they're unstable, which means that they have an incentive to sign up more originators and publish more loans, because the more loans they publish and sell, the closer they come to profitability. So there's a conflict of interest there, I think. And the risk is that these platforms not being profitable, if they cannot continue to raise equity, what happens on the day that they run out of money to all the loans that are on the platform? All the investors that have put money in. The originator may still exist, but if the platform can't run the systems anymore, what's their backup plan? So I think that's an issue that we've seen in P2P, the lack of equity funding or runway of these platforms. And as an investor, I would question that. Am I going to invest on I can look at the originator looks nice, the loan looks good, the yield looks good. The track record of the originator is great, but hey, I've got to look at the platform, because I'm accessing this asset through a platform. If this platform is going to disappear in 6 months because they don't have any money, how is this going to work? And I think that some of the platforms have been through this process. They realized that they were actually not going to reach break even. They've changed hands, they've been bought out, or they failed. And even some of them have been tempted to use money which was not theirs. I think it happened a lot in China, and there are cases where platforms failed and dipped into the wrong account. So I think my conclusion is the same. It needs regulating, and preferably centrally, because the problem is still in Europe. Regulation is not uniform, and German rules are not the same as French rules and not the same as Italian rules. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen very quickly, but it does need to happen. If you're managing retail money, you need to have a solid financial base, and that requires regulation.
We will come back to this topic in a few questions later, again when we talk about IUVO, because you only choose IUVO at the moment for listing new loans. But I guess most of our viewers are obviously knowing what we are talking about, and also since some time into it. And I guess it was a big learning for both sides, for you and for me and for all the other investors and people in the business in the last year. Also what happened to Grupeer, and this is also some spontaneous questions. I absolutely understand if you say you cannot comment on that, but it would be interesting because you also listed on Grupeer. And it was a learning for both sides, yeah. So it's nothing I want to blame anybody. I also don't want to blame you about that. Definitely not, because it's just a learning process and some kind of market adjustment that has happened in the last year. That's part of the game, that something goes wrong, yeah. But what is your what happened to the money at the moment you have at Grupeer? Or investors from you financed through Grupeer? Because, for example, I also have some loans through Grupeer, but yeah, what is the status quo? Do you have the money still, or is it gone, or is it?
The money is here. Basically, it's not at Grupeer and it's not with the investors. The money is here. It's been put in a segregated account. I think we published a statement on that on our transparency website, and we get inquiries from investors regularly. The money is here, the money is safe, it's in performing loans. And the reason it's safe is because we haven't given it back, because we have not received clarity on how it will be distributed back to the original investors. I don't know what went wrong on Grupeer. I have heard a lot of different stories.
Yeah,
we heard that the money we were paying was not reaching investors, at which point we wanted to verify before continuing the payments. We did not receive a satisfactory response. So at the moment the money is here, it's safe, it's on our balance sheet, which is probably the best place for it to be until there is some kind of legacy set up, or a liquidator or a legacy business. I mean, I don't know. I haven't had any recent news, to be honest.
Me either.
But the money is safe.
Good to hear from you as an investor.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know how it develops, but talking from my perspective, for me as a private investor, everything I do is just as a private investor. Everybody is responsible by himself for his decisions. There's no investment recommendation, but I just want to thank you as an investor that you take care on that as well. I just want to thank you that you made this decision, because I think it's the best decision you could make in this, that you take care about that. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, I think we have no choice, because I mean, if we end up paying money which we think is going back to investors but is not reaching them, then it obviously affects our reputation.
Yeah.
But I think also just to finish on the Grupeer thing, the loans that we had posted were real. The Grupeer loans, the investors who bought Ibancar loans on Grupeer bought real loans. We consolidated the numbers, so even the numbers, the last conversation we had several months ago with Grupeer, the numbers that they say were invested are pretty close. I mean, there's a small difference, but you know, it's all real. So I don't think that there was any leakage there.
Yeah.
But we're talking small numbers. I think we're talking 160,000 euros
for all investors, which is a very small
well,
part
obviously
of the
spread over.
platform,
yeah,
but there are a lot of other loan originators, of course, nothing related to you. But I think we'll leave this Grupeer topic now behind and continue. But it was still a learning, and it is interesting in the process of learning the whole investment scenario of P2P, because it's a process where we all learn from that. And I want to mention something. You also made this transparency list where also the investors, I will just put it in the screen, can back check or can check if this loan is connected. It was a learning, I guess, out of this Grupeer story.
Yes, I mean, there were situations.
Because a lot of investors might not know that this P2P Ibancar.com website exists. So I think it's good to mention it.
Yeah, so I mean, we saw, completely unrelated to Grupeer, as you said, we saw situations in China, in the UK, I think in the US, and a few in Europe, of, fraudulent platforms, people who were raising money, crowd money, with no real assets behind them, or fake assets. And although I think we are working with, or we have worked with decent platforms, we thought it would be good for investors to be able to check. So if you go, for example, to IUVO and you see an Ibancar loan that you want to invest in, you can check that it's a real loan by going to our p2p.ibancar.com website and verifying that we have issued that loan. And then you can assume it's a real and safe loan to invest in.
I think this is very unique for P2P investments, what you offer in this transparency.
I was hoping that more people would set that up. I'm not sure if any other originators have done that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's no secret that me personally reduces P2P investments in general, because I think the situation is changing. We all learned out of the last years, and also it's also a reason because of inflation scenario I have in mind. It's my personal decision, of course, where I invest, and I switched a lot into the stock market at the moment. Maybe also in the real estate, maybe even in Spain. Let's see what develops. I made a video about that a few days ago when I met with a real estate agency here. But on the asset P2P, the only thing I increase is the P2P investment in Ibancar loans. So this is what I wanted to say, to put it in a nutshell. Yeah, so for me, this is a really important plus you have with this transparency and everything that comes with it, and with our personal exchange and so on. But to continue on the next question, you choose, after all we have been talking right now and the process in the interview and what happened, you choose IUVO Group as the only platform for listing new loans at the moment. Why IUVO Group? For example, not Bonster, which I also know pretty well. Meanwhile, I even connected you, if you remember, with Jana. So it was funny to connect two CEOs in the business. But of course, it's your choice, and I would just be interested why this IUVO Group. Because of you, I had to go to IUVO. Yeah.
Several reasons. Obviously, we are diversifying our funding. That's the first thing. We don't want to be too dependent on P2P, because you saw during, for example, the peak COVID months, the market dries up, and then if you can't fund, then you have to put your business on hold. So that's a business risk that we don't want to take. So we have to have several sources of funding.
But that would be with several P2P platforms maybe even better.
Yes, but then you have to look A, at the stability of the platform, B, the management team, a little bit related to the stability of the platform, and C, the tech, right?
Okay.
I mean, we've worked with, we started working when it was still low volume, relatively low volume with some of the platforms we started with. They were sending us 3 spreadsheets, 4 spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets per day. And then it's very hard to reconcile payments, to do nettings, to calculate interest, because every batch of loans requires another spreadsheet per day, and you ended up managing 20 spreadsheets per month, and then you have to have 2 people on the payroll just to do that. So that doesn't work.
Makes sense.
And IUVO was one of the ones which was, I mean, they've had a very stable management team. We've had very consistent and positive dialogue with them all the way through the COVID situation.
So also after the learnings, sorry for interrupting, we had with other platforms. So you have the feeling this platform matches you better, and after your due diligence, you have a good feeling on the platform, obviously.
We had a good feeling on the platform. We had a good feeling on the people. And the tech was just a little bit further advanced, and we no longer use Excel basically. Yeah,
because you mentioned that already in 2019 when we had the last time the interview, that it's a nightmare with all these Excel spreadsheets and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So this is what you have been looking for. The reason is also because they are most digital.
Well, when we issue loans to IUVO, we just go on our own platform. We choose the loans that we want to fund. We just click, and we send.
So this is the difference to other platforms, obviously.
Yeah, I mean that's 5 minutes as opposed to a whole day's work.
And just to underline it once more, because already we have been spinning around this topic, but you also take, maybe after these experiences we made on several platforms, not to mention name again and again, but you also take a bit more care on the due diligence of the platform, also from your perspective, I guess. And
yes.
You have a good feeling on IUVO.
We have a good feeling on IUVO. We have a good relationship with them. They're, they know our business. We know their business. Some of the other platforms that struggled during COVID did not recover as well or at all. There are new platforms coming up. But I think, as I said, you need to do due diligence. I think the weakest, if you have a good originator and you have a reliable repeat investor, which is what we want, right? Someone who's with a growing or reinvesting portfolio. The weak point is the platform.
Yes, absolutely agree. This is why I asked it twice.
Nobody's looked at
it's that important for me right now, after all we learned as well. Yeah, so this is, and it helps a lot if I can, I have a lot of trust in Ibancar, of course. Yeah, you never know how things develop, of course. Yeah, but this is where I can start the journey. Yeah, and if you take care about the platform, and this is why I'm asking it twice and 3 times in one interview, it means a lot for me as an investor. This is the reason why I mainly focus, meanwhile, only on the Ibancar loans.
Well, that's the question. Yeah? Let's say Ibancar is doing a great job, and let's say your portfolio is performing and you're reinvesting every time, and let's say tomorrow IUVO disappears. How do you get your money back?
Exactly.
I mean, to me, you're anonymous, right? I know you because you've told me, but the other 1,000 people who've invested in our loans, they are a number to me. And if you write to me and say, hey, you've got 2,000 euros of my money, send it back. I don't know you.
Sure.
You're invisible.
Yeah. So this is why I asked twice and 3 times. So you have a good feeling on IUVO. This is what I wanted to hear from your
unless you know something that I don't know, and now you're trapping me into saying
no, definitely not. I just
my feeling on IUVO is very positive. That's why we chose them. It works very well. I can't give anyone guarantees on Ibancar or on IUVO, of course. But we are.
Either, I don't know. Yeah, but
our experience is very positive, and we will continue to use IUVO, and we will probably start using 1 or 2 more P2P platforms.
Monster, again, maybe?
Possibly Monster, possibly, I think Bonster is in our list of top candidates. So
you still have loans at Bonster, but you don't list new ones because I'm mainly invested in Ibancar and Bonster, and because there are no new loans available, I had to open the account. I made this video about it at IUVO. So this was the reason I had to follow you on the journey. So
Bonster,
now I have one more P2P platform, but it's okay.
We're connected, we're operational, and we may go back to Bonster pretty soon.
Okay. Very, very interesting for me.
For us, we're looking at a few new platforms. I don't think there's anything new that's popped up which we're missing. The new ones are small. The small ones are complicated because you have to put a lot of time into the due diligence and the connection, and then they have 100 investors or 1,000 investors, and you're not going to get a lot of funding. But we want to support the P2P platform, so we will put some effort into it. And the next thing is we will, as we launch new products and new countries, we will probably start using P2P more for that as well.
That's very exciting for me as well.
Because I think that's where we have the reputation and the track record, and people know us. And now we say Ibancar is going to Mexico, or is it going to the UK? Or Ibancar is launching a car finance product, then that's where we'll be funding it initially. Very good,
very exciting for me as well. Did you ever see the investors' view on the platform? Maybe you want to see it?
What we see? On IUVO?
Yeah, on IUVO.
Oh,
I would like to show you
the interface.
The interface. I think it's pretty interesting to see. So one thing, we already prepared it, of course, in the informal talks before to be authentic on the video, as I always like to be. We can see here this loan from the perspective I have as an investor, and we have here, for example, the Ibancar website, so your website, where we can back check that this loan is listed, of course, on IUVO by you. You can see it here.
Yep.
And I guess interesting is also that you can, of course, because of GDP, you cannot see the name and everything, names, of course, would not be possible, But you can see, for example, which car it is. You can see the collateral manufacturing year. So this is an Audi A4 from 2008. You can see the income salary and so on and so on and so on. So nice to have. And most important for us is the payment schedule, and there we have been in exchange with your team as well in advance. It was very interesting for me, but we cannot capture everything on the record, of course. But I think interesting is that we can see here this payment schedule, and we both were not sure about it in the beginning. Why, for example, we have on the 16th 2 times principal payment, but we had an answer, and this was?
I think the answer was that loan was published on that date, on the 16th, and that you're showing the history of the payment before it was actually offered to investors. So this loan was originated, I think this example was probably originated
on the 16th of February.
16th of February, so the client paid 2 installments before we offered it to investors.
Yeah, exactly, and then you summarize it here.
Yeah, or IUVO summarize it.
IUVO summarize it on the API, which is connected. And then also it was interesting for me that you have twice a month a settlement, at least with us investors.
Yeah, with IUVO, every platform is different.
Yeah, at IUVO, so usually the loans are paid from the borrower at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And this is also the time of the settlement. And also interesting for me was that you try to cover delayed loans for us. So you try to be on time even if it's a delay in the payment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we have payments coming in every day, and obviously we don't want to make a payment every day to every investor for €1 or €5. So we reconcile. So we do payments twice a month. So every borrower who's paid between the 1st and the 16th gets paid on the 16th, and every borrower who's paid from the 16th to the end of the month gets paid at the end of the month. And unless they are non-performing, so every borrower also has a 6-day payment window. So we don't take penalty interest or anything like that. So if a borrower is late, or he falls into he's still not non-performing, so he's still less than 30 days late, we will just make the payment to the platform. And if he becomes non-performing, then we buy the entire loan back.
Yeah, in up to 60 days. So it depends. It's not always
we
exactly
have
60
time.
days. You have the time frame of up to 60 days, and depending on many
depending. I mean, a lot of them get restructured. So we have the agreement we have with IUVO is that we have 60 days to buy back non-performing loans. I think almost 50% of our non-performing loans get restructured within that 60-day period. So we have 60 days to sort it out before buying back.
Very interesting information. Okay, so endless interview again. So I try to stick to the most important questions I would like to ask. Maybe your view of the future of P2P in the next years.
Difficult.
Very, very short. We already covered it a bit in the last sentences.
I think it's still very fragmented. I'm not sure if there are any profitable platforms out there, because I think even the big ones are still not profitable. So that's problematic. If they can't reach profitability, there's a risk that they may end up consolidating or being bought out by, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, maybe banks will step in or some kind of entities. So I still think it's a big question mark. I think it's becoming more and more interesting for institutional investors. So we see institutional investors investing via the P2P platforms, competing with the retail investors for the assets.
But sorry for interrupting, because this is very important for me, and also I think for the viewers. You also have direct investors, institutional investors.
Yes.
This is very important. So.
Yes.
Because before we have been, I think we did not mention it in the camera, and now I wanted to relate to that at this point of the interview, so sorry. Because before you said, okay, there was this problem of financing, back financing in the last year when there was this COVID crisis, and you were talking that you need several funds.
Funding sources.
And funding sources. And the point is, we did not mention that you mean by that you also have institutional investors.
Well, we have bank loans. Credit lines, P2P. So we, basically the way this business was built was bootstrapping. We were taking money wherever we could get
several
it.
Fundings.
From several sources.
Yeah.
And then P2P really kicked off 2-3 years ago, and that really helped us. And now as we grow, naturally, a business that's a startup that's been funded through crowd equity or crowd lending tends to grow into institutional funding, simply because of the volume and the ease. And we're doing the same, but I think we're going to keep using P2P because it makes sense and because that's what we were built on.
I get you.
But P2P, I think these platforms need to reach profitability. Or there will be consolidation or takeovers, and I think they'll also need regulation. I think regulating them now is difficult because...
But it costs also a lot of money, which is
to become
reducing
regulated.
the spread for the investors. We also have to see that it has to become profitable on the one side, as you mentioned very often, and on the other side, the regulation costs money. It's just to
regulation costs money, but also saves money,
because
the disasters that have happened, and they've happened in China and the US and the UK and Europe, may not have happened if you had that regulation.
Absolutely agree.
And the minute retail investors start losing money, then the regulators are going to step in. And the other reason that they will step in is if these niche markets start affecting wider markets, which is what you've seen in cryptocurrencies now. Cryptocurrencies used to be a bubble, and whatever happened in crypto world didn't affect the rest of the world, but we've seen in the last few months that it starts to affect the financial system to some extent. And
absolutely agree.
And when you have billions and billions of equity crowd lending, of debt crowd lending, and people are losing money, and it affects the bigger system, regulators are going to step in. The fear is when regulators step in, they look at all these platforms, none of them would probably meet the entry level requirements for a regulator. So it's a catch-22. Difficult. Yeah,
so definitely exciting topic.
But the returns compensate for that, right? I mean, you don't get 10 or 12% anywhere else. So you have to factor in
Yeah, for sure.
the
I
possible
mean,
losses.
the thing is also, for me, it's very important that the Ibancar loans have this 11 to 12%, which is just for me the level when I step into P2P, because if it's below 11%, below 10%, I would
Yeah,
go
it's
somewhere,
coming down. It's
I would
coming
go
down.
somewhere else. But I would not continue for 8%, for example, or 9% in the situation at the moment. Because in the average, for me, my goal is, for example, on the stock market to gain about 8% a year on the stock market on the long term, not every year. Last year was really perfect, to be honest, yeah, because I stepped into it huge in the March, yeah, which was after all not the worst decision, we all know.
But you see the stock market as an alternative to
I see it
debt
as another asset, as a private investor. Yeah?
Okay.
And I swap between, depending on
that's
the return.
That's risky, right? Because it's not the same product, not the same risk profile. Timing in the equity market is much more critical than in the debt market. Your downside is much bigger. I think investors diversify. I think it's very risky to say I'm going to go all in P2P or all in on the stock market.
Absolutely agree. This is also why I made a video for myself about the asset allocation topic. Yeah, but I changed a bit into the stock market, and if it's below 10%, I would even go maybe balance it more into the stock market. But everybody has his own decision.
What happens when the stock market yields 3% and debt yields 5%, or the other way around? You can't get 8%.
Well, you never know, but on the long term, usually you make about 4% dividend return and 4% gains on the stock market. On long term, if you see it for 20 years or 30 years, it's usually was like that in the history. So this is what I want to go for if I have a diversified portfolio on the whole world on shares. Okay. But anyway, let's stick back to this. Maybe one last question. How do you see the future of lending industry and especially of Ibancar, maybe in a few sentences?
Well, lending industry, I don't know. I think it's tough. I think the banks are dinosaurs, most banks. So the traditional banks. So I think there's going to be big growth in the neobanks, and I think in the whole fintech world, there are going to be lots of failures because of the pressure on growth above everything else. So I think it's still a tough sector, especially now. Economically, we see our borrowers increasingly polarized. They're either everyone struggled last year, but this year everyone is in one of two situations. They're either they have liquidity, and our prepayments are very high at the moment. So, and I think they're paying us back with government money, or they're still in a distressed situation. So I think that's the struggle for Ibancar. I think we're doing fine. We're continuing to grow. I think we're looking at 100% growth year on year. We're looking at launching an auto finance product, so finance to buy second-hand cars.
Oh, okay.
For the same target audience, kind of subprime people with the same kind of income as the ones we serve today, with the same kind of cars from 5,000 to 10,000 euros. And we're going to launch Ibancar in Mexico, hopefully Q4 this year, Q1 next year. We already have people on the ground there, so we're doing the legal work. And
so you should have enough loans for us investors to invest in the future as well.
Let's hope so. Sorry. So yeah, no, we're continuing to grow at a controlled pace. We're not trying to grow at all costs, but yeah, with lots of projects.
Great, sounds interesting. I want to be part of it on your journey as an investor, as a private investor. Maybe anything else as a final of this interview you would like to add to the community?
No, I think the community has helped us a lot. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't been able to achieve raising money on P2P. So I think that took us from being very small to being an SME. So we're very thankful to the community, and hopefully at some point in the near future we may also turn to crowd equity. because that it works, and that's a bit safer and a bit more of a regulated market.
Just that I get you right, proud equity means that it might be possible that we invest in Ibancar?
In shares, yes. So
I want to do it.
Yeah, obviously every
This is new for me. You didn't tell me in the last weeks, yeah?
You didn't ask. No, this is just an idea at the moment. It's one of the options we're looking at.
I would love it.
So every loan that we issue is 80%, well, between 70 and 80% debt, and between 20 and 30% equity. Whether we finance a loan on IUVO where we get 70%, I think on VIVENTOR we were getting 85%, and Bonster it was 90%. With our institutional investors, we get somewhere we get 80%. So the rest has to come from our own pockets, which is equity. And we have to continue to raise equity as we grow to fund the loan book. And one of the ways that we would like to raise equity is because we like crowd lending and it's been so successful, we probably might do some crowd equity where we would sell part of the business basically to...
That's interesting.
To the crowd.
So like on Crowdcube or something like that?
Yeah, we looked at Crowdcube 3 years ago. We were shortlisted to do a campaign on Crowdcube UK, but we weren't ready at that time. It was too much work to prepare because there's obviously lots of due diligence and lots of work. We didn't have the team to do that, but now, as you can see, we've grown a bit. We have 23 people here and some people abroad. So now we have the resources to do that.
Oh, okay, exciting.
So we may, we're discussing it with our board in July, and we may decide to do a crowd equity round Q4, Q1 for a couple of million euros to basically finance the part of the equity part of the growth.
Okay, of course I also will have to make my own homework about that and do more research in case.
Yeah,
but
it's not a dividend. It's not a dividend stock.
Yeah, but one question that comes with that, I really want to ask you for so long time, but somehow I didn't. Who are the owners of Ibancar? What can you tell us about that?
Well, there's no secret. Ibancar is owned 100% by IBAN Capital, which is a UK-based holding company.
Okay.
And IBAN Capital is owned approximately 10% by angel investors, so financial professionals who have come into the business, and 10% by a venture capital fund called Nuru, spelled with a K, K-N-U-R-U, Dubai-based, and 80% is still held by my family.
By your family?
Well, yes, my very close family.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So you're the owner of it.
We still control.
Most of it, you're the owner.
We still control the business.
It's good to know. I like it because I like family business most because this is a positive thing.
Yes,
because then you are really into it and then you're really interested in expanding it.
Well, the reason we have managed to hold on to such a large portion of the business is that we've managed to delay selling shares for as long as possible.
Okay.
And we managed to grow the business we managed to fund it ourselves for quite some time. And at some point that was no longer possible, so we did an angel round with some very, very good high-level finance professionals, most of them London-based, who help the business a lot and are involved on the advisory board and on the board of directors. And then the next step we did the round with the venture capital fund in Dubai, Nuru, and the angels and the venture capital fund will help us launch the business and the new products, hopefully in Mexico first, and then we may do some crowd equity alongside that.
Congrats one more time. I really appreciate so much what you're doing, you know that.
You're welcome.
And it's always such a pleasure to have a conversation with you. Also, I can learn that much for myself, for the personality and everything from you. So, like a mentor, to be honest, you are for me. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for the interview. Really looking forward to exchanging the comments right now. And yeah, we will stay in touch for sure.
Great.
Also behind the camera in the next weeks, you know, always when something is bothering me or is strange for me, we already have a call. We had this one time a few weeks ago when there was something going wrong with the API, and immediately we fixed this. So this is also really very positive for me at the end. It was a very positive experience because you see it's a real business. The mistakes happen, no problem. It's always part of the game, but we find a solution. We have a direct contact, and that was really perfect. Yeah, okay, so what should I say? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
to everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching.